Patrick, Brett, I want to identify right off the hop here a common mistake made by very successful real estate investors. And Patrick, Brett, we talk about this all the time. I mean, real estate is one of those places where when you make mistakes, it hurts. The mistakes don't cost hundreds of dollars. They either cost tens of thousands of dollars or they cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and sometimes millions, unfortunately. But the point, the mistake we want to identify today is often successful real estate investors have ridden a nice wave and they've had some great appreciation. They probably managed really well. They had some good cash flow. They had some great mortgage pay down. They have a great return on investment. And what ends up happening is they sit on that and they don't convert that equity to more income. And if something was to happen to that market, like let's say maybe COVID-19, let's just put it out there as an idea.
Yeah, let's just say something.
Maybe a worldwide pandemic. I don't know.
I mean, that nobody saw coming. Maybe what can happen in that time is you can actually undo a lot of the gains that you did make as the market comes back down because you didn't convert the equity to income. For the three of us here, guys, it's like this is an everyday conversation. But for a lot of people, including advanced real estate investors, they don't necessarily know how to do this. So, Brett, how can someone do this right now? Like, what's a concept? How can you do that right now in this moment?
Great. Well, JG, thanks so much for introducing this. It is a key concept for investors with a mind to longevity. You need to keep in mind. Like if you're trading stocks, you can just decide, okay, I'm out of this stock. I'm taking my risk off the table and I'm cashing out, and it's a liquid investment and you're out. Real estate is different. And if you're a real estate investor and you're in an environment where it's appreciating year over year, it kind of feels like I'm going to stay on this wave until you end up in a position where, look, you know what, now prices have started to flatten out and maybe there's some question marks. And if you're equity rich but cash flow poor, that's when you're at risk as a real estate investor. Even if you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity, if you don't have the income coming in from it to sustain it, or to meet your goals long-term, your own income goals, then your portfolio is out of balance, right? And so that's really been what we've been promoting in Calgary, and what we've been talking about with the Calgary market is it is an ideal market to convert equity into income. Our rent to price ratios here continue to be amongst the best in the nation. We've got an excellent bylaw that lends itself well to new construction rental product. And we're figuring out the cash flow code here in Calgary for investors that are looking to convert equity that they may have gained in another market and turn it into income with a piece of Calgary real estate.
Well, we've had these conversations, Brett. I mean, Redline's been in the Calgary market for many, many years. You've been playing the game as an investor and as an investor-focused realtor for a long time. And it's interesting that you bring up is that although Alberta hasn't seen big, appreciation gains, there's certainly those investors who've been playing the game for a long time and or have lots of mortgage buy down, so there's equity built in. But some of the hotter markets is what we're starting to see the trend, which is interesting. So British Columbia, where we've seen big growth in parts of British Columbia and or in Ontario, and you're starting to see some of those investors come into the Calgary market because exactly what you say, the prices are right and the price to rent ratios are getting better. So you're actually being able to cash flow in a lower price. So they're getting big bang for their buck if they're putting it into the right place.
We've had and I'll give you guys an example of a client that I was working with last week, an owner of several condos in the GTA. He's had a great run in equity there and done very well, fantastic investments that this gentleman had made, but is a little bit nervous about being able to maintain occupancy with more supply coming within that marketplace, and just a little bit of apprehension about the income stability within his portfolio. And so he had looked at things over and had spoken with his accountant and a good mortgage broker, and then looked at it and said, you know what, he could refinance his condos there, even take on more debt, but the return that he could get for positive cash flow by using that as a down payment on a Calgary income property would give him enough cash flow to also support his remaining portfolio of properties that he has in the GTA right now. And so you don't even have to sell it. You have the equity there already. If you're using it to buy a property that is designed to generate income, like the stuff we're moving right now, then it can provide that sort of insulation from an income perspective for a portfolio where you may be equity rich but cash flow poor.
And you know, I absolutely love what you're saying, Brett. And Patrick, you and I did a Facebook Live, I think it was either last Saturday or the Saturday before, where we talked about leverage and how real estate investors can take one property and over the course of 10, 15, 20 years, turn that into 2, 3, 5 properties and how to leverage that. This is what we're talking about here, folks, is when you've had enough of a good run and you've had some appreciation, some pay down, and some cash flow, it's time to take the next step. And that can be a scary thing, Brett, especially when you look at the headlines and you think, you know, you read these headlines about Calgary and the vacancy rates and the commercial and the oil and all these, you know, all these so-called experts that are naysaying on Alberta. What's really happening out there right now?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that, JG. I've had to be a Calgary cheerleader for the better part of half a decade here now. I have the pom-poms out everywhere I go.
I was going to say, I want to see the pom-poms. I bet you have
some. When next time you guys do, when we can finally do an acre event again, I'll bring some out for that.
Red and white. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? The market itself here in Calgary has been about flat. But what's changed within our market here is that we maintain our high rental rates due to a low amount of purpose-built rental supply. So we're not a mature market like you'd find in the GTA where there's lots of apartment buildings. Calgary wasn't developed that way. Calgary's basically developed as a bunch of these giant, you know, mega planned super communities of single-family houses. There's not a lot of rental construction. But our bylaw has changed in the last few years to try and bring more rental stock in to make up for stock that was taken away during the condominium conversion boom here in the late 2000s. So the planning authority is trying to bring in some of this stuff to add more supply at the exact same time that there's some really attractive financing options from CMHC on new construction multifamily rental real estate. And those two things taken together have created this environment where it's possible to get with new construction cap rates just under 6%. So you're talking, you know, 5.8% for a new construction multifamily project here in Calgary. You can do 4-plexes, 6-plexes, 8-plexes, 10-plexes. We have all of that. So that's what we're trying to highlight here is, again, this opportunity to use real estate to generate income, passive income through cash flow here in Calgary right now.
So when we look at the Calgary, well, let's look at the Alberta market overall, but we're talking specifically about Calgary surrounding area. When we talk about a flat market, we got to go back a few years. Like, so if we go back, let's say into 2014, 2015, we actually started to see, you know, we saw some gain. Then, of course, we got hit again. And then over the course of the past few years, we were starting to maybe get some green shoots. And just when we think we're like going to start gaining some traction, COVID hits, and then it's like, bam, and then oil prices like fall through the roof and all the things that are going on. But the point is that in all of that, what's interesting about that market is it's flattened out. So in other words, it hasn't gotten worse. It was already pretty stagnant and, kind of started to come up a little and then bam. So now we're sitting at a pretty steady flat market, but with some, always we're optimistic and looking at green shoots and are looking at a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. But so at the end of the day, though, you're buying at a great price. You're into a market that works well from a rental market point of view and lots of upside into the long-term future.
I mean, we're one of the biggest cities in Canada. We're a major metropolitan center of 1.3 million people here, so we're not a small town. And yeah, Calgary's taken its lumps. And again, when I have the pom-poms out, I'm always saying, well, we've been on the mat several times already, right? We got hit with the oil, the price supply shock with, the Middle East price wars in 2014, which changed the oil economy here. We had some governments coming in that were kind of, a little bit apprehensive about energy development, and that again kind of cast a dimmer light on our market. And then we had a worldwide pandemic, and throughout all of that, we have not turned into the next Detroit like I think a lot of people thought we might have. Our population continues to grow. We continue to be one of the most affordable markets in Canada or even North America. And so it really is a buy low opportunity. We don't have a lot of downside risk here. And we do have a great rent to price ratio. So if you were in a market where you've had good equity gains and you're wondering, how can I monetize this? How can I, look at the value, the paper value that I've built up? Well, looking at it, can you refinance it, and can you pick up a purpose-built income property in a market that's poised, or it's basically at the bottom? That's something that I think investors should consider.
Well, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, as real estate investors, what do we want to do? When do we want to buy? I mean, we want to buy at the bottom of the market. Now, you never can time the exact bottom or the exact top, but ultimately, when you look at what's going on in Alberta, you look at the Calgary market, then you start to say, well, gosh, all you have to do is look at the trend and see where it's at. And given all the hits that it's taken, guess what? It hasn't, to your point, hasn't come off the rails. It didn't turn into Detroit.
You'll find, sorry, JG, but you'll find, Patrick, that pricing on the overall you won't see Calgary post year-over-year gains of 2 to 3%. It's not going to be there. But within the asset classes that matter for investors, with this new construction income property, it will. We're already seeing impacts of the softwood lumber issue that's permeating now into material costing with the builders that we work with here, and we're hearing prices going up for some of the product that we've been moving for years at essentially the same pricing. So there are some waves there and some signs that I think that you could see where we're going to see supply starting to contract a little bit, and that could have an impact of upward price pressure for the asset classes that matter most for income property investors.
I asked Siri a while ago what she thought of Calgary, and she came up with resilient. That's the name that she came up with. So
Siri is so smart. I do have one. I just want to point something out here, JJ. I'm probably interrupting you again, but in this market, Brett, you make a really good point. Well, any market, but in Calgary, we're talking about what it is. We're at where it is, at the bottom, et cetera. But you said something interesting, which is property type matters. I mean, you're talking about new builds.
Yeah.
You're talking about properties in great areas with, great transportation, great accessibility, walkability, probably to some degree in terms of what they have access to. Let's put it that way. May not be walkable per se because it's Alberta, but ultimately, when we look at it gets cold and distance. But anyways, I digress. The point is that you're very specific about the products that you're looking at and that's important to understand. And, investors got to look at very specifically at property types that make sense, given the new kind of work from home thought process. So that's got to be built into what you're doing in all of that as well when you're trying to set your tenants up to win.
There's actually been a double whammy to what we sell into, these new construction things, Patrick. And the first one was a change in the local economy here, because Calgary used to be all about working downtown. Yep. So anybody investing here would want to have quick access into downtown, and the value of properties that were near the corridors of transportation into the downtown core always had elevated pricing. But when our local market changed here, people started to feel, you know what, I don't need to be right downtown. There wasn't the same jobs right downtown as there were before. And as the employment picture started to diversify a little bit, there were jobs being created in more suburban kind of office parks, industrial parks, and there was less sort of pressure to be right in the downtown core. And what also happened is when the pandemic hit, we saw that there was a drive towards properties with larger square feet. That's where tenants wanted to be, and they didn't want to be in these tiny little matchbox condos right downtown. They wanted something with a second or a third bedroom so they could have a home office, a little bit more room, because they're spending more time inside their home, right? And so both of these things have led to a push towards more of a suburban consumption of real estate here in Calgary. And that's where this sort of narrow band, this sort of Goldilocks zone of new construction combined with a strong rental market has created a great cash flow opportunity for real estate investors here.
Yeah.
Brett, I want to end on a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I have a fundamental belief that in real estate, if you can manage the downside really well, you'll do phenomenal in real estate. I think risk is a big part of real estate. And if you can, and the concept of de-risking your portfolio by taking where you've done really well, call it BC, call it Ontario. We're kind of picking on those, those provinces right now. But the point is you've done well in real estate, and you're actually going to de-risk by going to a place like Alberta, which from the outside is a little bit scary. I mean, if I presented that concept to the average investor that's maybe not sophisticated, I kind of sound crazy. You know what I mean? Like I kind of sound crazy to take your awesome, equity in Ontario and BC where you've done really, really well and de-risking by actually going to Alberta. But explain to to our viewers, Brett, why that does make sense for the right investor.
Well, I mean, what you're after, right, is a balanced portfolio, and I've always talked about, this sort of need to balance your returns out. So if you've got a lot of equity plays, so you've purchased property in hot markets, the appreciation is there, you're making great money off of that. Well, you have to look at, where is the income going to come from at some point? Eventually, you want to realize those paper gains and take that gain off the table and turn it into something tangible. And then the prospect of being able to do that with income real estate is really what I think a lot of real estate investors get into the game for, right? To create the second income stream for them and take an asset like their equity and turn it into income. And that's something that hindsight is always 20/20, but it's really, I've been there. I've had a lot of equity. Like I remember 2014, my portfolio was looking fantastic. And then the market changes in Calgary and you can't get out. You can't get out of the real estate because now everybody wants to get out. And if you're in something where you don't have enough rental income to provide the cash flow yields that you would expect, then your portfolio doesn't look as good as it might have even just 6 months earlier, right? And so that's where this concept of turning equity into income really has started to catch some momentum with some of the investors, clients that we're working with in markets that have had huge equity gains. They're saying, I already have enough assets where I'm getting equity gains. Now I need income. I need to take that equity and turn it into income. And Calgary, while we don't have a lot of equity gains, we do have good cash flow here.
Right, which gives everybody, gives individuals from out of town provinces where there's been some strong equity gain. And guess what? Now they're in an environment, they're having to say, do I pull my gains off the table now? Do I hang in there? What am I doing? Those are different conversations. But so Brett, how do people get a hold of you? What's the best thing to do? Redline where do they contact you?
I'll leave a comment in the video below here. You can send me a direct message through Facebook if you want to. I'm not a hard guy to find on via email either. I'll leave a comment here with my contact info, Patrick. You can get me that way.
Beautiful.
He's either working, helping real estate investors, or he's running to keep the pounds off one or the other. He's always doing something.
Maybe you could do a little running for me too and see if that'll help me lose some of my COVID-19.
Then I don't have to run as far, right?
Me too. In fact, folks, if you guys want Brett to do an extra kilometer for each of you, just put it in the comments below and then we'll see how far we can push them.
Let's see how that weight loss program works.
I'll be running out to see you in BC, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, guys.
Redline
Pleasure.
Real Estate.
Okay.
Patrick, thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.